The stars had belonged to the elder races for 12,000 years before humanity found a way to reach them. The Vela-3 hegemony, the Crix Collective, and the Syndicate of Ashol had built their empires across 1,000 worlds. They had fought their wars, signed their treaties, and created the Galactic Concord to keep peace among themselves. They were old, they were powerful, and they believed they knew everything about how the universe worked. Then the humans arrived. The first human ships were small and slow. They carried families, scientists, and dreamers who had spent generations traveling between the stars. When they finally made contact with the Concord, they came with smiles and open hands. They brought gifts. They shared their music and their stories. They asked only for friendship and a place among the stars. The elder races laughed. High Magistrate Corveth of the Vela-3 hegemony looked at the human ambassadors and saw nothing but weakness. Their bodies were soft. Their lives were short. They had no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. He declared that humanity would be given protected status within the Concord. This sounded kind, but it was not. Protected status meant humans could not vote. They could not own territory. They could not build warships. They existed only because the elder races allowed them to exist. The human ambassadors protested politely. They filed complaints. They requested meetings. The Concord ignored them. Years passed. Then decades. Then centuries. Humanity spread across 40 worlds, but none of them truly belonged to humans. The Vela-3 took 30% of everything humans produced as protection fees. The Crix used human colonies as dumping grounds for their toxic waste. The Ashel kidnapped human scientists and forced them to work in their research facilities. When humans complained, the Concord told them to be grateful they were allowed to live at all. Ambassador Elena Vasquez was born on the colony world of New Eden. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes. She had spent her entire adult life trying to win rights for her people through peaceful means. She had written 10,000 letters. She had given 5,000 speeches. She had attended 3,000 meetings where alien officials looked at her like she was an insect. She never raised her voice. She never made threats. She simply kept asking, kept pushing, kept believing that someday the galaxy would see humans as equals. Her predecessor, Ambassador James Chin, had done the same thing for 60 years before her. He died at his desk, still waiting for the Concord to schedule a vote on human representation. They scheduled it for 300 years in the future. Then they forgot about it entirely. Elena attended his funeral and made a promise to continue his work. She did not know that humanity had already begun a different kind of work in secret. Deep beneath the frozen surface of Titan, humanity's largest moon, engineers were building something the galaxy had never seen. They called it Project Silence. For 200 years, the brightest human minds worked in hidden facilities across 40 worlds. They studied every alien weapon, every ship design, every battle tactic. They found weaknesses the elder races had forgotten they had. They built warships and hid them in asteroid fields. They trained soldiers in underground bases. They prepared for a day they hoped would never come. The elder races never suspected. Why would they? Humans were weak. Humans were harmless. Humans smiled and bowed and paid their tributes on time. The Vela-3 security forces sometimes searched human freighters for weapons and found nothing but food and medicine and children's toys. They laughed at how pathetic these creatures were. They did not know about the hidden compartments. They did not know about the coded messages. They did not know that every human freighter captain memorized the locations of Vela-3 military bases and reported them to Earth. They did not know that humanity had been keeping records of every insult, every death, every broken promise for 300 years. Humans had long memories. This was something the elder races never understood on Earth. In a vault beneath the old city of Geneva, there was a room filled with screens. Each screen showed a name, a face, a story. These were the humans who had died because of the Concorde's cruelty. The miners who suffocated when Velathri inspectors accidentally damaged their air supplies. The children who starved when Crick's cargo ships dumped their food shipments into space as a joke. The scientists who disappeared into HFY laboratories and never returned. Every human leader visited this room before taking office. They stood in silence and read the names. They made the same promise that every leader before them had made. We will remember. We will wait. And when the time comes, we will answer. Ambassador Vasquez visited the room once a year. She would stand before the screens for hours, her lips moving silently as she read name after name. Then she would return to her work, smiling at alien officials who treated her like dirt, filing complaints that would never be read, asking for justice that would never come. The galaxy saw her patience and thought it was weakness. They were wrong. Patience was not weakness. Patience was a weapon, and humanity had been sharpening it for 300 years, waiting for the moment when they would finally use it. The elder races had taught humans that kindness was foolish and that mercy was for the weak. Someday, humanity would show them just how well they had learned that lesson. But not yet. Not today. Today, Elena Vasquez smiled at High Magistrate Corvith and filed her 946th formal complaint. Tomorrow, she would file another, and deep beneath the ice of Titan, another warship slid silently into the darkness, waiting for a word that had not yet been spoken. The colony of New Valencia was the jewel of human civilization. 14 million people lived there, spread across green continents and blue oceans that looked almost like Earth. Children played in parks. Farmers grew crops in rich soil. Scientists studied the native wildlife. For 3 generations, families had built their lives on this world, and they called it home. Then the Velathri hegemony decided they wanted it. High Magistrate Corvith stood before the Galactic Concorde and announced that New Valencia existed within ancestral Velathri space. He claimed that ancient Velathri explorers had visited the system thousands of years ago. He had no proof of this. He did not need proof. The Concorde voted in his favor because they always voted in his favor. The humans of New Valencia were given 30 days to leave. They could take only what they could carry. Their homes, their farms, their hospitals, their schools, everything would become Velathri property. Those who refused to leave would be sent to labor camps on frozen mining worlds. Many would not survive. Ambassador Elena Vasquez requested an emergency meeting with the Concorde. She brought evidence that showed Velathri explorers had never visited the New Valencia system. She brought testimonies from human families who had lived there for 100 years. She brought legal arguments and historical records and emotional pleas. The Concorde did not let her speak. High Magistrate Corvith interrupted her before she could say a single word. He waved his clawed hand and laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the chamber. The other alien ambassadors laughed with him. Elena stood at the podium, her prepared speech still in her hands, and waited. Corvith activated a galaxy-wide broadcast. His face appeared on screens across every human colony, every human ship, every human home. He wanted all of humanity to hear what he was about to say. "Little ambassador," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You come here again with your papers and your begging. Do you not understand? Your protests mean nothing. Your complaints mean nothing. You exist because we permit it. You breathe because we allow it. New Valencia belongs to us now, and there is nothing you can do." He leaned forward, his yellow eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. "What will you do, little ones? Will you cry? Will you file another complaint? Will you ask us nicely to change our minds?" He laughed again. "You are weak. You have always been weak, and you will always be weak." The broadcast reached Earth in seconds. It played on every screen in the United Earth Assembly, where human leaders had gathered for an emergency session. They watched in silence as Corvette mocked their ambassador, their people, their entire species. President General Marcus Chen stood at the center of the chamber. He was an old man with white hair and a face lined by decades of burden. He had spent his entire career trying to find peaceful solutions to humanity's problems. He had believed, truly believed, that patience and diplomacy would eventually bring justice. He did not believe that anymore. Chen watched Corvath's sneering face on the screen. He thought about the names in the vault beneath Geneva. He thought about the children of New Valencia who would be sent to die in frozen mines. He thought about 300 years of insults and broken promises and murdered innocence. Something shifted in his eyes. The other human leaders saw it. The alien ambassadors in the chamber saw it too, though they did not understand what it meant. Chen walked slowly to the broadcast console. He looked directly into the camera. Across the galaxy, billions of humans watched their leader. Billions of aliens watched too, expecting another polite protest, another humble request, another display of human weakness. Chen spoke one word. Enough. His voice was quiet. There was no anger in it, no desperation, no pleading. There was only cold, absolute finality. The word hung in the air like the silence before a storm. Then Chen turned and walked out of the chamber. Every human delegate followed him. The alien ambassadors watched in confusion as humanity simply left. No explanations, no arguments, no requests for further discussion. Just empty seats where humans had once sat and smiled and begged for scraps of dignity. Within 1 hour, every human embassy in the galaxy closed its doors. Human diplomats boarded ships and returned home. Trade agreements were canceled. Communication channels went silent. For the first time in 300 years, humanity stopped talking. Within 6 hours, the first Velathri patrol fleet arrived at the edge of human space. They expected to find unarmed freighters and terrified colonists. Instead, they found the first human expeditionary fleet waiting for them. The Velathri commander stared at his sensors in disbelief. There were thousands of ships arranged in perfect formation. Not freighters, not transports, warships. Real warships, with weapons that his computers could not identify and armor that his scanners could not penetrate. He sent a message demanding that the humans surrender. He received no reply. He ordered his fleet to advance. He received a reply to that. The human ships opened fire, and the Velathri patrol fleet ceased to exist in less than 4 minutes. The last thing the Velathri commander saw was a human ship passing through the wreckage of his vessel. Written on its hull, in perfect Velathri script, were 3 words: "We remember everything." Across the galaxy, the elder races received news of the battle. They learned that humanity had been building a secret military for 200 years. They learned that the smiling, bowing, patient little species they had mocked for so long was coming for them. And they finally understood what that single word had meant. Enough. The humans were done being nice. Admiral Yuki Tanaka stood on the bridge of the HSS Reckoning and watched the stars burn. She was a small woman with short black hair and eyes that had seen too much. She had spent 30 years preparing for this moment, training in secret, studying enemy tactics, and waiting for the word that would set her free. Now the word had been spoken, and she had work to do. The Velathri hegemony controlled 200 worlds. They had the largest military in the galaxy, with ships that had crushed every enemy they had ever faced. Their commanders were proud and confident. They believed this war would be over in weeks. They were right, but not in the way they expected. Tanaka commanded 15 fleets, each with 1,000 ships. They moved through space like wolves hunting prey. The Velathri expected humans to fight the way other species fought in neat formations, following predictable patterns, retreating when they took losses. Humans did none of these things. Human ships attacked from every direction at once. They hid behind asteroids and moons, then struck without warning. They flew into the middle of enemy formations and fought at close range where velocity weapons could not aim properly. They used tactics that alien commanders had never seen because no sane species would ever try them. But humans were not sane. Humans were creative, and 300 years of anger had made them very, very determined. The Battle of Korath Prime lasted 6 hours. The Velocity had assembled their largest fleet to defend their military headquarters. 50,000 ships waited in perfect formation, their commanders certain of victory. Admiral Tanaka looked at the enemy fleet and smiled. She ordered her ships to do something impossible. Human vessels accelerated directly toward the Velocity formation. They did not slow down. They did not spread out. They flew straight into the heart of the enemy fleet at speeds that should have been suicide. Velocity gunners fired desperately, but the human ships were moving too fast and too keen, unpredictably. Then the human ships reached the center of the Velocity formation and opened keen fire in every direction at once. The Velocity fleet tore itself apart. Ships trying to target humans hit their own allies instead. Commanders screamed conflicting orders. Formations collapsed into chaos. Human vessels danced through the destruction, striking targets and vanishing before anyone could respond. When the battle ended, the Velocity had lost 40,000 ships. Humanity had lost 200. News of the defeat spread across the galaxy. The Crix Collective and the Syndicate of Ashel watched in growing horror. They had joined the war expecting easy victories against a weak species. Now they saw what humanity could really do. But the ships were only part of the terror. The ground forces were worse. General Alexander Volkov led the human armies. He was a massive man with cold blue eyes and a voice like grinding stone. His soldiers called him the Bear, and his enemies called him nothing at all because they did not live long enough to call him anything. Human soldiers fought in places where other species could not survive. They attacked Velocity bases on frozen moons where the temperature dropped to 200 degrees below zero. They captured Crix installations on volcanic worlds where the ground itself was on fire. They invaded axial stations in the crushing depths of gas giant atmospheres. They fought in complete darkness. They fought in poison atmospheres. They fought in radiation zones that would kill most species in minutes. And they won. They always won. The alien soldiers began to fear humans more than death itself. But what truly broke the enemy was not the killing. It was the humiliation. Human forces captured a Velocity communication station and used it to broadcast across enemy territory. Instead of threats or demands, they played human music, happy songs about love and friendship, children's songs about animals and sunshine, cooking shows where smiling humans explained how to make chocolate cake, while Velocity soldiers listened to recipes for dessert. Human forces destroyed their supply lines. When human troops captured enemy bases, they did not burn them or tear them down. They painted murals on the walls, pictures of humans and aliens shaking hands, pictures of flowers and trees and peaceful skies, messages written in perfect Velocity script. We tried to be friends. You chose this instead. The Velocity High Command went mad trying to understand the human strategy. Were the humans mocking them? Were they insane? Were they trying to communicate something? The answer was simpler and more terrifying. Humans wanted the Velocity to know that this war was not a struggle for survival. It was easy. Humans were destroying the greatest military in the galaxy while barely trying. The cooking shows and the murals were humanity's way of saying, "This is what you get for making us angry, and we are not even finished." 3 months after the war began, the Velocity hegemony sent a message to Earth requesting peace negotiations. Humanity did not respond. The message was sent again, this time with offers of territory and treasure. Humanity did not respond. The Vela-3 begged. They apologized. They offered to return everything they had taken. They promised to treat humans as equals forever. Humanity still did not respond. Admiral Tanaka looked at the latest Vela-3 plea and turned to her communications officer. She asked if there were any more enemy fleets that needed destroying. The officer checked her sensors and reported that there were 3 left. Tanaka nodded and gave the order to advance. Behind her, the Vela-3 message sat unanswered on her screen. She did not even glance at it. Humanity had spent 300 years waiting for the galaxy to listen. Now, it was the galaxy's turn to wait. The Krix Collective had been watching the war from a safe distance. They had sent ships to help the Vela-3, but only enough to show support. They expected the conflict to end quickly with a human surrender. Then they would help divide whatever was left of human territory. Now they understood how wrong they had been. The Krix High Council met in emergency session on their homeworld. The council chamber was built from living crystal that sang when important decisions were being made. Tonight, the crystal screamed. "We must surrender," said Councilor Rex, his voice trembling. "We must surrender before they come for us." "Surrender to what?" demanded Councilor Tho. "They do not respond to our messages. They do not acknowledge our existence. How can we surrender to an enemy that pretends we are not there?" This was the terror that gripped the galaxy. Humanity was not negotiating. Humanity was not making demands. Humanity was simply destroying everything in its path and ignoring all attempts at communication. The Syndicate of Ashol tried a different approach. They sent ships filled with gifts to human space. They sent apologies written in gold and precious gems. They sent the greatest scientists of their species to offer their services to humanity. They sent everything they could think of that might make the humans stop. The gifts were accepted politely. The scientists were given comfortable quarters and good food. The Ashol ambassadors were told that humanity would contact them when ready to discuss terms. That was all. No promises. No timeline. No indication of what humanity actually wanted. Weeks passed. The Ashol ambassadors waited in their comfortable quarters and slowly went mad with fear. They could see human ships passing by their windows, thousands of vessels moving toward targets they could not identify. They could hear human music playing from nearby stations, that terrible, cheerful music that had become the sound of death across the galaxy. And still, no one would tell them what humanity wanted. The truth was simple, but the elder races could not understand it. Humanity did not want gifts or apologies. Humanity did not want territory or treasure. Humanity wanted the galaxy to feel what humans had felt for 300 years, helpless, ignored, and completely unable to control their own fate. The waiting was the punishment. Meanwhile, the war continued. Human forces pushed deeper into Vela-3 space, liberating species that had been enslaved for thousands of years. The Keth, a small reptilian people, had been forced to work in Vela-3 factories for 40 generations. When human soldiers arrived and broke open the factory doors, the Keth did not know what to do. They had never been free. General Volkov stood before a crowd of confused Keth and spoke in their language. He had learned it specifically for this moment. "The Vela-3 told you that you were worthless," he said. "They told you that you existed only to serve them. They lied. You are free now. What you do with that freedom is your choice." The Keth stared at him in silence. Then, slowly, one of them began to weep. Others joined. Soon, the entire crowd was crying not from sadness, but from a joy they had never been allowed to feel. Stories like this spread across the galaxy. Humanity was not just winning a war. They were tearing down an empire of cruelty that had lasted for millennia. Species that had been crushed under Vela-3 boots for generations were suddenly free. And they remembered who had freed them. High Magistrate Corveth watched his empire crumble from his palace on the Vela-3 homeworld. He had been the most powerful being in the galaxy. Now, he was a prisoner in his own home, surrounded by guards who looked at him with barely hidden contempt. When human forces finally reached the homeworld, Corveth tried to flee. He made it as far as the spaceport before General Volkov's soldiers caught him. They did not hurt him. They did not even speak to him harshly. They simply put him on a ship and took him to Earth. Corveth expected torture. He expected execution. He expected the kind of cruelty that he had shown to countless others throughout his long life. Instead, T was taken to a room beneath Geneva. The room with the screens. President General Marcus Chen was waiting for him. The old human leader looked tired, but his eyes were sharp and clear. "Do you know what this place is?" Chen asked. Corveth looked around at the screens. Each one showed a face. Human faces. Millions of them. "These are the people who died because of your hegemony," Chen said. "Every name, every face, every story. We recorded them all." He pressed a button and the screens began to scroll. Names and faces flowed past like a river of ghosts. Corveth watched as the dead of 3 centuries paraded before his eyes. "I am going to leave you here," Chen said. "You will watch until you have seen every single one of them. It will take 14 hours. Corveth opened his mouth to protest, but Chen was already walking away. Corveth called, "What do you want from me? What must I do to make this end?" Chen stopped at the door. He turned and looked at the alien who had mocked humanity, who had called them weak and worthless, who had ordered the deaths of countless innocent people. "I want you to understand," Chen said quietly. "I want you to see what you did. I want you to know that we remember every single one of them. And I want you to spend the rest of your very long life knowing that everything you built has been destroyed by the species called weak." He left. The door closed. Corveth stood alone in the room as the faces of the dead scrolled past, one after another, hour after hour. Somewhere around the 8th hour, he began to weep. By the 14th hour, he understood what humanity had known all along. Some debts could not be paid with gold or apologies. Some debts could only be paid with memory. The war ended 18 months after it began. It did not end with a great final battle or a dramatic surrender. It ended with silence. The Velethri hegemony simply stopped existing. Their fleets were gone. Their leaders were captured or dead. Their empire, which has stood for 8,000 years, is nothing but ruins and memories. The Krix Collective and the Syndicate of Ashel surrendered without conditions. They did not know what humanity would demand, and they were too afraid to ask. They simply announced their surrender and waited for judgment. Humanity made them wait 3 more months during that time. Human forces worked to help the species that had been oppressed by the elder races. They brought food to starving worlds. They sent doctors to planets where disease had been ignored for generations. They built schools and hospitals and homes. They did not ask for payment. They did not ask for loyalty. They simply helped. The freed species watched in amazement. This was not how conquerors behaved. Conquerors took and destroyed. They did not give and build. What were the humans doing? The answer came when humanity finally announced the terms of peace. The old Galactic Concord was dissolved. In its place, humanity proposed something new, the Terran Accords. Every species in the galaxy would have equal representation. Every species would have equal rights. No one would be allowed to enslave or exploit another. And any species that tried would face the full force of humanity's anger. The Krix and Ashel delegates read the terms with trembling hands. They had expected to lose their territories, their wealth, their freedom. Instead, humanity was offering them a chance to be equals in a new galactic order. "Why?" asked the Krix ambassador. "After everything we did to you, why would you offer us this?" The human diplomat smiled. It was not a cruel smile, but it was not entirely warm either. "Because we remember what it felt like to be treated as lesser beings," she said. "We will not do to you what you did to us. But understand this, if you ever try to return to the old ways, we will destroy you. Not in 300 years, not in 3 months. Immediately, the ambassador paused. We spent centuries learning to be patient. We can be patient again if we must, but we would prefer not to be. The Terran Accords were signed in a ceremony on Earth. Representatives from 1,000 species gathered in a great hall built specifically for this moment. Some came eagerly, grateful for their freedom. Others came fearfully, still expecting some terrible revenge. Ambassador Alina Vasquez was carried into the hall in a floating chair. She was 127 years old now, her body frail and her hair white as snow. But her eyes were bright with tears as she looked around at the gathered species. She had spent her entire life fighting for this moment. She had filed complaints that no one read. She had given speeches that no one heard. She had smiled at aliens who called her worthless and begged for rights that were always denied. Now she would sign the document that made her species equal to any other in the galaxy. Her hand shook as she pressed her thumb to the agreement. The hall was completely silent. No applause, no cheering, just respectful silence from 1,000 species who had finally learned to fear that silence. President General Marcus Chen stepped forward to address the gathering. He was an old man now, worn by years of war and leadership, but his voice was strong as he spoke. 300 years ago, humanity came to the stars with open hands. We asked for nothing but friendship. We offered everything we had, and you took our gifts and gave us chains in return. He paused, looking across the sea of alien faces. We tried to change your minds through words. We wrote letters and filed complaints and gave speeches until our voices failed. We believed that if we were patient enough, if we were kind enough, if we showed you who we really were, you would eventually see us as equals. His voice grew harder. We were wrong. You did not want to see us as equals. You wanted to see us as servants, as slaves, as creatures to be used and discarded. So we stopped trying to change your minds. We changed your reality instead. The alien delegates shifted uncomfortably. Some looked at the floor. Others looked at the human warships visible through the great windows, still orbiting Earth in endless formation. Today, we start something new, Chen continued. Today, every species in this hall stands as equals. No masters, no servants, no tribute, no chains. This is not a gift we are giving you. It is a standard we are setting, a standard we will enforce. He looked directly at the Crix and Ashel representatives. Learn from our example. We waited 300 years to strike back. We remembered every wrong. We planned and prepared and kept our anger hidden until the moment was right. Other species you have wronged are watching now. They have seen what patience and memory can accomplish. Do not give them reasons to follow our path. The ceremony ended. The delegates departed. The Terran Accords took effect across the galaxy. Years passed, then decades, then centuries. The galaxy changed. Species that had been rivals for millennia learned to work together. Worlds that had been wastelands were rebuilt. Children grew up in a universe where no one species ruled over others, but the memory of what humanity had done never faded. On 1,000 worlds, parents told their children the story of the patient predators. They spoke of the species that smiled for 300 years while building the weapons to destroy their oppressors. They spoke of the single word that ended an empire. They spoke of the silence that was more terrifying than any scream. Whenever a leader considered exploiting a weaker species, an advisor would lean close and whisper, "Remember the humans. Remember what patience can hide. Remember what one word can unleash." Hey. In the great hall on Earth, beneath the document that had changed the galaxy, a single word was carved in stone. The word that had ended an age of cruelty and begun an age of equality. The word that reminded the universe what happened when humanity stopped being nice enough. Ambassador Elena Vasquez died peacefully in her sleep 3 years after the signing. She was buried on New Valencia, the world she had fought to save. Her gravestone bore a simple message. She asked politely for 100 years. Then she stopped asking. The galaxy remembered her. The galaxy remembered all of them. And the galaxy never forgot what that single word had meant.